This is John Beethan, your host and producer for Alternative Health Tools. And this is episode number 69, and it's titled Getting Past Anxiety with Melissa Woods. I'm imagining if you're listening, you actually may have some sort of anxiety disorder. Organizations like the Anxiety and Depression Association of America and others estimate that about 40 million Americans have some sort of anxiety disorder. But in our conversation, we discovered that it's possible that there could be 1 in 2 people that actually have it. And given that the U.S. population is about 320 million, that means we're looking at about 160 million people that may have this disorder. And given that it's June 3rd, 2017, there could be really strong evidence to support that, given the climate here in America. Melissa's written a really great book called Getting Past Anxiety. And really what it is a story about achieving freedom from anxiety. So for people that have depression, PTSD, and OCD, it's really a great read. Now for the show. So I wanted to welcome Melissa Woods to this podcast, and we're also doing a little video things here too. So what's really great is that I guess one of Melissa's agents contacted me regarding getting her on our podcast, which is actually starting to happen more and more. And she wrote a book called Getting Past Anxiety. And boy, don't you know that this is a great topic. I think you said 40 million people in America experience anxiety to some degree?
Yes, and the more I do these podcasts, we are all convinced it's more than 40 million.
Yeah.
The 40 million are the ones that come forward.
Oh, those are the people that are actually talking about it, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And you know that a lot of people don't talk about it. So.
Right. So why do you think they don't talk about it?
Shame. You know, that was my biggest thing with anxiety is the shame behind it. What's wrong with me? Nobody in my family or in my friends or anyone, coworkers knew about my anxiety. As a matter of fact, when I wrote this book and published it, I gave it to professionals as well as my family and friends. And the common theme was, I never knew. I never knew that you suffered. You seemed so put together.
Oh, put together and calm.
And I'm like, what does that look like? But no one knew because I didn't talk about it because of the shame behind it, the secrecy. And with all the shame and the secrecy, it isolates you. Yeah.
I can certainly talk about the anxiety in my own life, and it's largely come down a lot just because, working with self-talk. And realizing that, we create a lot of suffering by the talk we make with ourselves.
That is so true. And one of the ways that helped me with the anxiety was hypnotherapy. And the practitioner that I worked with, she did NLP. She was certified and trained in NLP. Neuro-linguistic programming. So that helps change, the buzz in your head.
Yes.
That talk that you have.
Yeah, I think I told you I spent a better part of 6 years studying NLP and being trained by some really good people.
It's very powerful.
Yeah,
it really is. It's very, very powerful. And I do use it.
You do? So these aren't the droids you're looking for?
No.
Do you know what that means? Yeah, that's from Star Wars. Well,
exactly.
In NLP, as I understand it, and I largely like to make sure these podcasts are about the guests, but, we're on the subject of hypnotism. Sure. And, it was, NLP was really started by a linguist and a computer programmer that clearly understood that you could actually program and change the way, people think about things. And they studied 2 people, Virginia Satir, who was a really exceptional, successful family counselor, and Milton Erickson, who was a hypnotist.
Oh, wow. So that's the connection there.
That's the connection.
Okay.
Yeah, and and I was doing a lot of computer programming at the time. When I heard that, I thought, oh, this is interesting, programming. Yeah.
So you're reprogramming your brain.
Yes. So 40 million plus people have anxiety. What typically is the person that actually says, I need help, and comes to you? Or at what point in their life do they realize that they just need help?
Well, for me, just a little bit about the story, writing this book. About 20 years ago, I was flying back north to the East Coast, to New York, and I had a panic attack. And I couldn't get on the plane. And I had suffered from some anxiety, as a child and growing up, but it had never stopped me from doing anything. And so I was not able to get on this plane, and I didn't know what was going on. I was really confused and very, very scared. So I went to my general practitioner, and she advised me, to go see a psychiatrist, which I did. And didn't really talk about the symptoms or anything, why. It was just more of, here, take this medication and this will help, give it some time. And so I was really desperate at that time because I just didn't know what was going on. So I did try the medication just for a couple of days, and it made everything worse, all my symptoms worse, the racing thoughts, the irritability, insomnia, everything. And so I stopped using the medication. And I just, through knowing people in, the chiropractor, the massage therapist, I found this woman who is a healer. She's a transformational healer. And I started this journey with her to unravel, and get to the root cause of my anxiety. It was a little funky she's not your traditional therapist. So I was skeptic of the work a little bit, and, the whole trust and, exposure, because I had the shame thing. But I was pretty desperate. I was hanging on by a string. So she, helped me to really get into the root cause of it. And, I took this journey with her, and that's actually what the book's about, is the journey. It is a fictional book. I wrote it as a fictional book, but the journey of the main character is my own. So, and I started writing it just for me to have a voice and to help me in my healing. And then as I'm writing it and it's unfolding, I'm thinking, geez, this could help people. And you know how when you start something, it just all of a sudden you're just in this creation mode and things come to you. And, so it's just, the mission is really to bring awareness of anxiety and to show people that there are other methods outside of medication that you can do. What are the
typical medications people take? Because I don't really know.
No, I know. Well, back then, it was in the 90s, Prozac was the big thing.
Oh, yeah.
So I took the Prozac, and I understand that it takes weeks and weeks and weeks for it to really help, but I just couldn't. I think I lasted 3 days, and I just felt worse. I just couldn't stand it. So I just chose to do something different.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, that is primarily the theme of this podcast, is that we discover new alternative health tools from practitioners.
It was a journey, and I feel very grounded, like we were talking before the podcast here, that, there's a little residue left. Sometimes you've got to manage some things because we live in a society that is, stressful.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I can fly again and, on an airplane and stuff like
That's
that.
Great.
So it's very freeing.
What are the top 3 things you think, or actually with your experience with clients and talking with people, that stress people out?
Oh, well, work.
Okay. Okay. Can we dig a little deeper into there? What about
Sure.
what about the work? Just because there's, I've been following Simon Sinek. I don't know if you know who he is.
I've heard of him.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll send you a link to his latest video. It's 30 minutes, but well worth watching. And fundamentally, he's done pieces that have gone viral about the millennial question, and it's all about leadership. And in companies and corporations, people don't want to be managed and told what they do. They want to be led. Right.
It's very true.
Yeah. So
no, it's very, very true.
So
no, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say. So what?
I like the topic.
Yeah. So when you go deeper into it, what people are saying is it personal relationships they have with their bosses, or that's primarily it? That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah. No. For me, I had a career in sales. And I did technology sales, and from the anxiety, the performance, the performance anxiety was big. But because prior to that, in my life, I had swept the anxiety under the rug and didn't deal with things in my life, it compounded. So when I got to a place and had more pressure from my job, I was a single mother raising a child. And so just all these compounded pressures, just my body, when I went to go get on the plane, said, I've had enough. You need to do something about this. For me, for the career part of it, it was, the relationships with your peers and your customers and your boss and so forth. But because my anxiety had compounded so bad, I had to drive. I was anxious driving in traffic. I got to the point where I couldn't get into elevators. Flying, I couldn't fly for work. So everything I couldn't do my job.
This sounds very much like the symptoms I experienced about 2.5 years ago when I was rear-ended in a car. And long story short, I realized I had experienced a pretty severe trauma.
Yes.
So we're
trauma
talking.
Is big.
Yeah, so we must be talking about anxiety. You can't be talking about anxiety without talking about trauma, I'm guessing.
No, and the healer that that I connected with, she did a lot of trauma work with me, unraveling the trauma that had happened in my life.
Through what kind of techniques?
Oh wow, she did like trans analysis. She did cranial work. We did chakra work. We really dove down into
you did
unraveling things. Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, getting to the core.
Getting into the core. So were you able to go all the way back and really find out maybe the first times in your behavioral pattern or core beliefs that it really?
It was. It was a combination of factors, to simplify it, not to get into, some big heavy stuff, but the combination of factors is how I grew up, the era that I grew up in back in the 60s, and who my parents were. So with all, and plus I was a very sensitive child. I am a sensitive person, which is a good thing. To be sensitive, intuitive, that sort of thing. So, with all of those combinations, my mother not teaching me how to empower myself, to make my own decisions, so forth. So, just with all those combinations just created, in the environment I grew up in, just created this anxiety. And it compounded, like I said, over the years. And just by not dealing with stuff, life stuff, we all have our stuff, it just compounded, and my body said, I'm not, my psyche said, it's time for you to deal with your work and do your work. So,
So it sounds like I usually ask people the defining moments, it's like, what can you name a defining moment in your life when everything changed?
When I had my child.
Oh.
Yeah. I credit this transformational journey from having a child because the way that I grew up, I didn't want him to grow up with that anxiety. Mm. And I didn't want to pass anything on to him in my parenting style, the way that I was parented. And so he really saved my life. He really did. He's the one that, got me to get grounded and, find the monsters.
Yeah, you had to
deal with the anxiety. Absolutely. He didn't deserve to have my stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you. I mean,
to me, I think all parents should do that.
Yeah, I know.
Would we live in a different society?
Yes. So then you started parenting yourself. Is that about right?
Exactly. That's exactly what I did. And I found the healer to mother me and to help me see a different way, just to heal all of what I needed to heal.
Yeah.
To provide a nurturing, loving environment for me to work on what I needed to work on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I've come to believe, and I follow what Eric Schmidt, who was the ex-CEO of Google, he's still involved. I think he's chairman of the board or something. But, he basically says everybody needs a coach. Everyone.
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're maybe working a job or something, you probably just need good friends. But we need coaches.
We do.
Yeah.
We really do. We need someone, and she was that I could go to, feel safe, and to trust, to unwind.
Unwind.
I call it unwinding the DNA.
Oh.
The script in your head. And then once you unwind, unravel, and to heal and let go, then you can put in new stuff.
Yeah.
And be a different person.
Yeah, I'm reminded of part of my passions about myofascial release.
Yes.
And the unwinding. I mean, so you're talking not so much the physical, but you probably did some physical work, right? Unwinding.
Yeah, by trade, I am a licensed massage practitioner. I don't practice anymore, but I've worked on I've been licensed by the state of Washington here for over 20 years. So I did have a successful practice at one time. And I did work on people that suffered from anxiety. Some of them didn't know that they did, but, muscle tension is a form of anxiety.
Yes. Yes.
Insomnia is a form of anxiety.
Well, I'm sitting here going, I just cannot help waking up at 4:30 in the morning. I'm wondering, sitting here going, I wonder if that's a form of anxiety.
I think so. I think so. Or they say, too, that time of hour is very creative hour.
Yes.
A very spiritual, creative hour, too.
Well, it is. I generally fix a cup of coffee and go for a walk.
Yeah.
And it's pristine and it's quiet, or I'll sit in some sort of contemplation or meditation. Right.
Yeah, I've read lots of stuff on that being a very spiritual time, very creative time.
Yeah. So if people actually go to gettingpastanxiety.com.
Yes.
And I want to talk about the word anxiety at some point because I had a complete reframe many years ago. But actually on the book page, I'd like you to give people listening a little hint about the chapter 3 where Stella meets Rachel.
Yes.
And that sounds like
it's my favorite chapter.
Is it
one
really?
of my favorite chapters. I actually have many of them, but
why is it your favorite? What makes it?
Because I would never be who I am today without her.
Without Rachel?
Her help. Without her help, yeah. Stella.
Okay, so who is Stella and who's Rachel?
Stella is the main character. And like I said just a little bit ago, is the journey in the book is mine.
Yes.
So I just made it a fiction and changed the names, but the journey is mine. That's it. And so Rachel is the transformational healer that I worked with for quite a while to unravel this anxiety. So, and to understand it and to heal it. So what
about the meeting of Rachel?
She did you read the chapter? Or?
No, not yet.
Okay. She, wow. It was very spiritual, and it was very different in the meaning of Rachel. Stella had been in therapy in the past, but it was more traditional therapy.
Talk therapy.
Exactly. And so when Stella met Rachel, it was really quite odd. And in the chapter, or in that chapter specifically, she writes about the experience in terms of what, even down to the trinkets sitting on the shelf, just really describing this environment that she was entering into. She was skeptic, and she was scared, but she was very desperate. It was like she didn't know where else to go. She needed to be here, and she wanted to heal and to help herself. And the way that she had met Rachel was so, the synchronicity behind it allowed Stella to sit into that energy and say, okay, this is meant to be. So give it a shot. Be open to this.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Well, it's often true, I think, that most people don't make a shift until something gets so painful.
Yeah.
Which is different. And one thing I'm doing, really making a shift, is to sort of flip that around and be more motivated towards imagining how things could be better, my life could be better, in a positive way. In other words, being motivated towards rather than being motivated away from.
No, I understand that, because that was also, besides my son, I was missing out on so much. The anxiety was holding me back from living life and experiencing it in my career, in my relationships with my family and my friends, even the relationship with myself. And I just the isolation and the fear and the panic around that, I just didn't want to live my life like that. So, like you said, you look at your life and go, wow, it's just, I want this differently. I don't want to be like this. I don't want to live like this, because it's just very confining.
So in the process, therapeutically, do you start building experiences in the imagination of how your life could be?
In the beginning, I was so afraid. But as I thawed out, I became hopeful, and then was able to be creative in my mind about what was possible again. Living a life, having a career that I actually felt passionate about, being a good mother to my son, being a good friend, being able to be in an intimate relationship, being healthy, having forgiveness, and being in a healthy way with my family. It's just, it's so freeing. I can't put it into words. It's an experience that I didn't feel before, but I feel it now. And this is what this whole sharing. I mean, it's great that you do these podcasts, and there's all this resources and information out now.
Yes.
Whereas when I was going through this, even as a teenager or a young adult, there wasn't any of this. And anxiety was taboo. Nobody wanted to talk about it. This is great. People want to talk about it. So you can come here and listen to these things and this experience and actual people going through it.
Yes.
And it helps you to, it's inspiring.
Yes.
And it motivates you, and you can take action. I just think it's great.
Great. Well, we've talked about this, but this is part of the reason for the expertise platform. So I am publicly, it's on the audio podcast, everyone's hearing this. I'm inviting you to come play with me in this space.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be able to do this, because, after the podcast comes out, we can certainly, create a live interactive webinar for people that have heard the podcast or even haven't, can join us, and we can come play and collaborate, and people can ask questions, and
no, it's great. I think it's just great to have that resource for people.
Yeah,
I
great.
really do.
Well, that's wonderful. If you're only listening to the podcast, Melissa has a beautiful smile, and she's very warm. So there's no reason to not really engage, and at gettingpastanxiety.com, and go take a look at the book there. And we're not wrapping this up anytime soon. I'm just letting people know midstream here. So about the book and the word anxiety. In my travels through, becoming more self-aware or more aware outside myself, the word anxiety to me is a really interesting word. And it's, to me, it means, to some degree, fear of the future.
Yes.
And I think there's a misconception about anxiety, being, well, this is how I feel right now. But actually, my own personal experience when I listen to other people, what they really are talking about is something in the future that doesn't even exist.
Right.
That it is created in the mind, created here. And, I just wonder what you thought about that.
No, it's very true. That's where there's all of that theory and work, and saying, all the reading that you do is be present in the now. There's a lot to say about that, because when, just personally for myself, if I start thinking about what needs to be done, or, like you say, things in the future, it can be too overwhelming. And then for me, that creates some anxiety, because, it's, the other thing too is the control.
Oh.
You want to control that, the future, or you want that to happen, now.
Certainty.
Yeah. And exactly. I was on this, I don't know if this refers to this, but it's just coming up in my mind, so I have to think about it, or I have to say about something about it, is I was on this podcast the other day, and we were talking about anxiety and intuition.
Oh, nice.
And so intuition can be a part of that future thing as well.
Yes.
So it can create some form of, anxiety, So
what podcast was it? I'm going to listen to it.
Her name is Sarah Fader.
Okay.
She's out of Brooklyn, New York, and she wrote a book called Stigma Fighters.
Stigma Fighters.
Stigma Fighters.
Uh-huh.
And we were on, because she was in New York in the West Coast, so my podcast was 6 a.m. It was great.
Good morning.
It's like, okay, how do you talk about anxiety at 6 a.m? But it was great. It was really a lot of fun. And she really wanted to talk about that, and she really believes, anxiety and being an intuitive person, and how there can be that connection there. And I have friends, and I am intuitive. A lot of people are intuitive. And why I wanted to talk about that is your direction of saying the future and creating anxiety, and being intuitive. Sometimes you intuitively think about things in the future. And so I believe there is that connection there. So,
intuitive. Then you can also talk about dreams as well. Mm-hmm. 2 or 3. Well, shortly after the last presidential election, where Trump ended up getting in, a week or so later, I had a nightmare. It was, but it was way beyond nightmare. It was, I actually experienced that, basically in the world there was a nuclear holocaust that actually completely wiped out the earth as we know it, or living creatures.
Right.
And people I know have a lot of anxiety about that, and rightfully so. But
no, there's a lot of anxiety too. And the other thing about that as well is we as a society, we're so polarized now. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. We'll say more.
I mean, as a society, we're on other ends of the spectrum now.
You mean you're talking political camps, that sort of thing?
I just think, well, everything affects us. Everything. The traffic, your work environment, your home environment, whatever. I mean, we're all a part of this big creation, right? And I think it's because, political can be in that as well. I don't like to go down that road just because it's just right now it's so, you know what I mean?
What, you have anxiety about it?
Doesn't everybody?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what camp you're in, right?
No, I don't. I actually, you
seriously.
You can I'll tell you, you can pretty much guess what camp I'm in, so to speak. But 3 months before the election, I had this aha moment where I realized that if Donald Trump got in, it could be a very good thing, that it would activate people. And that's what I experience.
Yes.
Okay. So that's what I'm experiencing. And one thing I've realized, because of my work with environmental groups like North County Eco Alliance and Immersis, which is the nonprofit for the water protectors, which is very involved with the Station Co-Lab, which if you can come down for that, that'd be awesome, by the way.
Yeah. When is that?
It's Wednesday.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
But there's other opportunities.
Good.
Okay, there's just lots of opportunities. So my point about why I even mention it is that looking at the sixth extinction, which we are in the middle of, not to bring up any anxiety for people, there have been 5 extinctions. We're in the middle of the 6th, and it's racing right ahead.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay,
so.
I'll share some stuff with you later, maybe even on this, but I will.
I'm interested. I'm sure your listeners would be interested too. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we're talking anxiety, this could be.
Yeah, I mean, it is, right?
Yeah. So it got real simple for me after I watched the film, Racing Extinction, which was released in 2015 and done by the same people that did The Cove. Basically, as an example, the barrier reef in Australia is now dead. It's not almost dead; it's dead. And when you look at biology of the Earth, it is the lungs of the Earth. It's where so much oxygen is created.
Okay, I understand that.
So I'm sitting there looking at people and having conversations with people like I am now and going, guess what? It's not like you get out alive and I don't, or I get out alive and you don't. It's truly, we're literally in the same boat.
Oh, absolutely.
So to me, it breaks down all anxiety and thoughts and judgments about another person. And I don't have a lot of anxiety about it. I just don't. It's like, I do what I can. I've taken so much stuff off my plate that absolutely makes no difference at all. And my anxiety level's gone way down. And the biggest thing I did for myself to reduce my anxiety, people listen up, is I unplugged my cable 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
I stopped watching mainstream media commercials and that quote-unquote propaganda because it is programming.
It is.
So that was one way. That's one thing I did to reduce my anxiety, Mm-hmm.
Well, podcasts, I understand, are very big, and they're getting much bigger than, like you say, mainstream, TV.
Yeah, I got involved in 2005 because I realized it allowed anybody with something or nothing to say to be heard.
No, it's true, because you can go somewhere and really have a one-on-one conversation and listen to one that 2 humans are talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. It's live, it's real, it's, it's authentic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you do speaking engagements?
I do.
Great.
I do.
So what do you have? what do you have coming up, or what are your favorite kind of venues to do, so I can be thinking about you while I'm out and about connecting people with people?
Yeah. Right now I'm doing book signings and, things like that. I'm doing very heavy in the podcast and book signings. We're doing interviews in print. And then we are getting prepared to do some speaking gigs. So we're almost there.
Nice.
We're almost there. Yeah.
That's
the big thing right now is promoting the book. I really want to get the book out, get people to read it. It's a very inspiring, motivating novel. I made it fiction because it's nice to talk about stuff in a story.
Yeah.
The book looks self-helpy, and self-help books are awesome because I've read millions of them. But for myself, I just wanted to tell this story, or tell this experience in a story.
Yeah.
So I made it fiction.
It's been said that you can go into a bookstore and the shelves are full of self-help books, but you will not find a section on helping others.
Exactly. And I remember I'm going to be in Barnes & Noble here pretty soon.
Oh, great.
And I've been talking to them about where do you put books on anxiety. And she says most of them are always in the self-help section. I go, where do you put a fiction book on anxiety? And she looked at me like, that's a good question. So that's why it just confirmed why it was really important for me to write a fiction, to make it a story, because people can dive into it and connect with the character and, be inspired and motivate to take action in their own life and to heal their anxiety.
Nice. You might think this is funny, but you might want to call one of the bookstores and ask them to, well, why don't you try putting a couple copies in the cooking section?
That'd be great.
Well, can
we just put it everywhere?
I used to work for Touch the Heart Press in Washington State out of Orcas Island, and our goal was to sell 100 books a day. And so
that's a good goal.
Oh, it was great. And we'd start at 6:00 in the morning calling the East Coast and work our way back in time zones. But that's one thing I started doing was, how the book sales? Well, we haven't really sold any. What section are they in? Oh, self-help. Why don't you put them in just another section? Just, I can't remember what sections.
I will do that.
Yeah.
We'll see. And I'll let you know.
I'll call you back in a week, okay? And so they would move it to another section. I call them back and, we need to order more. So
that's great.
Because people, for those on the audio podcast, what I'm drawing is a box. And so people have a tendency, we like to classify things. We have lists. We have, that's where it goes. But really it can go many different places. Anxiety.
No, it's true.
There's not an area in people's lives where anxiety doesn't exist. So
no, either you know someone that has it or you have it.
Yeah.
It's very true. When I was writing the book, people would ask, what are you writing about? Is anxiety? Oh, I suffer from anxiety. Or, oh, my girlfriend suffers from anxiety. So either you experience it at some level,
yes,
or you know someone close to you that experiences it.
Yeah.
And I think the number is growing. I really do.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Given where we are, I'm actually back on your website, and you have a whole section under shows for podcasts, book signings.
Yours will be up there.
Great. Well, once this goes live, which will be a couple weeks actually,
okay,
I'll be sending you and your webmaster, whatever, the iframe code that'll make it really easy for you to just drop that code on your website, and they can listen to it.
Nice. Yeah, you can get my book on Amazon right now too.
Oh, good. So, all right. Yeah, we can do that. So, anything else you want to cover?
Oh, yeah, there's, you can talk about anxiety forever.
Yeah, it gives me a lot of anxiety thinking about that.
Me too. No, I just thank you for letting me be on your show, and I appreciate the conversation. And I'm glad that there's a place that people can come and talk about it and listen about it too. You're not alone. That's the biggest thing, is you're not alone.
Which brings up the question, like, it's been said 1 out of 5 people, and that stat's probably changed, have cancer or know somebody that does.
Yeah.
So in terms of anxiety, I'll bet you it's 1 in 3.
I bet it's 1 in 2. Seriously.
Oh, whoa, really?
Yeah, I do.
And how do you come to that?
Just from my experience of writing this book and then talking about it. Whenever I talk about it, doesn't matter where I am, people either say, oh, I suffer so badly from this, I want to read your book. Or they say, I know, like my sister does, my mother does, my boyfriend does. So either they do or they know someone. So that's 1 in 2, right?
Do you have much? Yeah, we thought we were going to end this. We're not done yet.
That's okay.
I experience in others, honestly, the millennial generation, there's a lot of anxiety there.
Yeah.
And I think
I have a son that's 26, so he's millennial. And yeah, he has friends that have, there's this hum, this energetic hum for them, that, and even in my job, I work with, millennials. So
yeah,
it is so prevalent, and they've done so much research on it.
This little cell phone.
Yes.
Creates a lot of anxiety.
Yes.
Once again, I'll send you a link to Simon Sinek's thing, and he'll explain that one really well.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's a problem.
It is.
It has to do with, basically social skills.
So they don't have them, or they grew up on the mobile,
Yeah, they don't have social skills. There's a whole thing that goes on in all social networks called ghosting, where you have this back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and then all of a sudden, someone's gone. And there's no explanation. There's no way to get in touch with them. And so it creates anxiety. It's like, what did I say? What did I do?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we won't mention the sites, but yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Oh, we can mention the sites. Everybody knows.
They've done so much studies about Facebook.
You're right. I know.
I read and read and read about Facebook. It's like the illusion behind it.
Yeah.
But Facebook is good for getting the word out. I mean, it's how you, I have a Facebook account, and it's awesome because that I'm reaching a wider audience, whereas 20 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So it is a good thing.
Oh, no, it's a very good thing.
Yeah, on things that you want to do. But in terms of developing who you are through your Facebook friends.
Mm-hmm. So is it okay to ask you, where are you living now?
Yeah, I live up in Seattle, and I also live down in LA once in a while as well. So I love both those areas.
How often do you come down to LA?
Maybe once every 3 months.
Well, let me know.
It depends, because I've got, I want to create stuff down there as well, with podcasts and interviews and book signings. And once I get into Barnes & Noble, I'll be down there at the Grove. And that's the great thing about Barnes & Noble is they help you with the book signings. So
that's awesome.
I'm going to do it all over the nation. So
yeah, there's a really nice Barnes & Noble down here in Encinitas.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're all over, but I mention it because if you're ever coming down this way, give me a shout, and I'd love to.
I will definitely do that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, good.
This has been fun. Thank you, John.
Thank you. We've been talking with Melissa Woods, really talking anxiety and getting past it in her book, and a whole lot more. It's been alternativehealthtools.com, the podcast, and another episode where we discovered something new in an alternative tool to help you.